Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Financial Classroom Podcast. I'm your host, Will, and with me on the other side of the mic is Tim.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to be back for another episode of the Six Figure Millennial. This is a segment that recognizes the accomplishments of young savers and encourages other young people that it's possible to reach 100K net worth early on in life.
Yeah, so for today's segment, we have actually a serving military member from Canada, Major Nick Barber from Lethbridge, who hit $100,000 net worth at the age of 25, serving in the military. Nick, would you like to say hi and kind of just introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, good evening, fellas. My name's Nick Barber. Joined the military at the age of 20. I went to the Royal Military College in Kingston, Ontario, where I graduated with a Bachelor of English degree. I'm an artillery officer by trade. So after graduating in '06, I did some training, then deployed to Afghanistan in 2010 as a forward observer and joint terminal attack controller. And then after that, I spent 5 years in recruiting in Toronto. And then I was recently promoted to major 3 years ago and took command of a reserve artillery unit in Lethbridge, Alberta. So that's where I am right now. And so I just did a change of command about a month ago, and I'm currently doing a program for a master's degree through the military that's being done online due to COVID. So otherwise it would have been a residency program for a year in Toronto.
Awesome. Cool. Nick, I guess before we actually dive into the questions, just want to thank you for your service. I mean, it must be tough going overseas to serve for the country. So thank you for your service. I guess everyone appreciates it. And yeah, we really
thank you very much for the support, gentlemen.
Yeah. So I guess, Nick, we'll dive right into the financial stuff because that's what this podcast is about. And so we'll go, what is your story like growing up? What were your parents like financially? What were you like financially? Were you always good with finances, or did you struggle with finances? What is your story?
My father passed away when I was pretty young. I was only 10 years old. And so he left my mom with 4 kids. I was the oldest at 10. My youngest sister, she was 4 years old at the time. Mom didn't have a degree, whatever. She was a bus driver. So basically she had to raise us on about $30,000 a year.
Wow.
So money was pretty tight, but it made us close and everything. And she taught us the value of work ethic. But from the age of 12, I knew if I wanted to buy a video game or something, there wasn't extra money laying around. So I had to start, cutting lawns and delivering papers and those kinds of things. Yeah. So I learned pretty early on the value of a dollar. Mm-hmm. And then, when I went to once we got to high school, I was able to get a job at a gas station. And again, knowing that there wasn't that much money around for 4 kids, I was going to have to take care of university or college on my own. So started working about 30 hours a week, part-time during the school year. Was still able to, manage to fit in hockey and football through that. And I was able to do all right in school. I still, was an honor roll student. So, just kind of juggle it all. I know my mom had to go yell at the football coaches a couple times saying, unless you're paying for his university, he's going to work. So he kind of cut up some slack. But so that was great. And then in the summer times, then you really buckle down and work, the 60 hour, 80 hour work weeks and try to sock away as much money as possible. So then in about grade 12, I found out about the Royal Military College and how it's a fully subsidized university program. Yeah. So I thought, okay, well, here's a way for me to get a degree. Canada was a peacekeeping nation, hadn't started Afghanistan yet at that point. So it's like, okay, well, this seems like a good way to get some good job experience and get my undergrad taken care of. So applied. I didn't get accepted the first time around. So I went to the University of Windsor, did a year of criminology there. Mm-hmm. Did all the upgrade courses that I need to that like calculus and stuff in high school that I did well in, and then managed to get accepted into RMC out of the University of Windsor. So after that first year, I transferred to the military college and did my 4 years there. So
awesome.
So yeah, so that's what got me into the military. My initial plan was just to do the 5 years of obligatory service after school and then get out and become a police officer or something along those lines. But I ended up really enjoying the military, and so I'm still here, still having fun.
Awesome. So financially, were you saving lots in the military then as part of your story? Were you like when you got your salary, were you putting it away, or did you have debt early on?
So one of the issues I had was when I was at the University of Windsor, I applied for a small student loan to help cover up some differences, but the bank, even though my university at RMC was paid for, they continued to allow me to have $5,000 a year while I was there. So obviously, I used that, and even though my university degree was paid for, I ended up graduating with a $20,000 debt. So my big goal immediately after graduating was to get rid of that. But starting off, I was only making somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. And living expenses and everything. So there wasn't a whole lot of money to go around. So it actually wasn't until after my deployment, because there was, it's tax-free when you deploy, plus there was some extra danger pay and stuff. So it worked out pretty much to the dollar. The military input the extra $20,000 into my account, and I signed the check over to the bank and cleared up that student loan. So
Nice.
Since then, it's been a goal to stay out of debt. So
Nice. That's awesome. So how old are you now, Nick?
38.
38. So you hit 100K at the age of 25. What is your current net worth now at 38 years old now?
So I'd say I'm probably in and around about $1 million now. So the value of my pension, if I were to leave the military today, is worth about $800,000 is what they would pay me out. I own a 50-acre farm with one of my brothers. So that farm, my half is worth about $170,000, and then I've got about $30,000 in cash for a future down payment on my next home.
Okay. Awesome. I think you answered the next question that Tim had for you, which is how your salary is kind of allocated there.
The savings, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go from when you first started, you said $50,000 to $60,000. How much is the salary range from then to now? Like when you first started to now?
Yeah. So right now, like today, I'm making closer to about $110,000 as a major. So basically, every rank that you go up, there's pretty significant pay raise, but also within rank, there's anywhere from 4 to 10 pay incentives. So every year you get a small bump. So for example, like captain as an officer in the Canadian Armed Forces, once you're qualified in your trade, you'll make it to the rank of captain generally within 3 years. The starting rank for a captain is about $70,000, but after 10 years, that same captain, even if you never get promoted, you'll be making closer to 100.
Okay. Wow. Cool.
Okay. So at what point in your life did you start saving or investing? Like how old were you roughly?
Yeah, so I think where I really started saving was, probably around the age of 14, where it's like, okay, I need to start stocking away money for university. So that was just, my mom didn't really know anything about investments, mutual funds, anything like that, but she's just like, just go work hard, put as much money as you can away, and and she kind of taught me a bit about budgeting as far as like set aside a little bit to go have some fun with, but the majority should be going into your savings account right now.
Nice.
Wow, the age of 14. Like I don't think I know many 14-year-olds that are thinking, all right, I'm putting away for college or university, or that's awesome. Just that you were able to have that kind of determination at that age. That's so good.
I think it was mostly growing up poor. Like we had a really happy life. Like things were good, but it was stressful, and I did not like that feeling of stress. So I was pretty determined to try to make sure I set myself up as best I could.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah. And you mentioned that early on in life, you kind of got yourself into about 20,000 of debt there. Are there any other financial mistakes that you made along the way that you're kicking yourself for maybe, or?
Absolutely. So the student loans was a big one because there was no reason for it, but when I was at school, the war in Afghanistan had started during that time. So I kind of justified it to myself being like, oh, well, as soon as I graduate, I'm probably going to end up in a war zone. So go have some fun now, because you never know what's going to happen. So being a little melodramatic, but anyone can find a reason to justify blowing money that they don't have. So there was that. So that was the first one.
Can you
I
describe that? Like, what do you mean? Like, did you rack up credit card debt, or?
Well, no, it was just the student loan that they gave me, like, because my school was paid for, and they gave us they pay you a salary while you're there, so they take away room and board. But I was getting paid $500 a month into my account, so to rack up 20,000 in debt on top of all that was kind of dumb. So.
Yeah.
And then another one I did was I got roped into buying a timeshare. So went down, just normal, vacation down to Dominican or something like that. Me and my girlfriend at the time, they're like, oh, hey, if you come listen to this meeting for an hour, we'll give you a free hour massage. So went in, started listening. They're like, talking us up, because we were talking about maybe getting married, and, oh, hey, you can have the wedding here at this resort and all this. So they said all the right things. Those people are sharks.
That's how they get people. They're trained like that.
They talk smooth.
Yeah. So for me as a 26-year-old, not making much money, I had no business buying a $6,000 timeshare. Well, actually, I think it was actually worked out to be an $18,000 timeshare. Luckily, I was able to get out of it after only 6. So that was a good stupid tax that I paid on that one. And the other lesson that I learned was I had a good buddy not that long ago, about 5 or 6 years ago. He was like, hey, Nick, I've got a can't miss stock. I've maxed out my tax-free savings accounts on this thing. Put $3,000 down on this, it'll grow for sure. And pretty much as soon as I bought in on the stock, it started tanking, and eventually the company went bankrupt. So I went from 3,000 to 0. And, that was a good lesson learned as far as myself personally. Don't really, I have a hard time with investing because I can't really see where the money is. It's not like property or whatever, but I feel like mutual funds and ETFs are probably the safer way. Otherwise, it's gambling. You could probably just go to the casino and throw $3,000 on red and have just as much chance of coming out ahead or losing. So
true. That is so true. Yeah. So Nick, you mentioned you're not into mutual fund, et cetera. Like, you're not into investment in terms of the stock market kind of thing per se, but you mentioned earlier that you invest in a farm, like you said, like a property thing.
Yeah. So actually, that was one thing I neglected to mention earlier. So one of the things that happened was 2 of my siblings were going to school at the University of Windsor, and they were renting a house, and they were saying, yeah, we're each paying $600 or $700 a month to rent. And at the time, houses in Windsor, you could get a decent house for $120,000. So we're like, hey, what if the 2 of them that were going there, and my other brother and I, who were in the military, what if we all go in together, buy a house? You guys manage the property. It was a 4-bedroom place, so they got 2 friends to move in with them as well to help make extra payments on the mortgage. And then this way we can actually have an asset. And my mom had remarried by then. So she and my stepfather, they lent us $10,000 for the down payment, which was incredibly nice of them. And so during the 4 years that they were in school, we were actually able to completely pay off the mortgage and pay my parents back their down payment money just by having all of us pitching in money on a monthly basis and renting out the extra room. So that was our initial investment. After they graduated, we ended up selling the place, and the equity that each of us had, my one brother and I used that money to buy a farm. So we had 50 acres, and that covered the down payment. And then we just finished paying off that mortgage.
You're mortgage free on the farm.
Mortgage free on the farm. Yes.
Probably feels so good. Hey,
it's pretty incredible.
Congratulations.
So, and especially we got really lucky because we bought the farmland at $180,000, and it's now worth about $340,000. So pretty close to doubling in value. And so that's a good asset to be done and over with. And now it's moving on to whatever the next thing is. So
yeah. So for listeners out there, yes, Nick isn't comfortable with the stock market and stuff, but the key is he invested, right? He put his money to work, and he did it in, maybe not the mutual fund, not the stock market, but he did it in real estate. And there's no right way or wrong way to invest, but as long as you find your investment technique and you can master it, then you can, like Nick, double his money. So
Yeah, definitely. And so from you sharing your story, I take it that none of this wealth that you've accumulated has really come from a big family inheritance or lottery winnings or anything like that. It's you've worked hard for it. You've put in the time, you've put in the effort. I guess you got a small loan from your parents, but you paid that back. It wasn't anything crazy significant.
No, there's been no big gifts that way. But it's again, learning from the example of my parents and my mom and my stepfather, like they're doing quite well now, and just reiterating the point of, take your money, keep investing into more real estate, or one of my dad's lessons that he's taught us now is just invest in something that you're interested in. So don't buy farmland if you don't care about farmland, but maybe you'd like to have a cottage someday. So if you invest in a cottage and you can Airbnb it out or something like that, that's a way to have something that you actually want long term. That's a good way to make some money on it.
okay. So Nick, you mentioned earlier that the financial mistakes that you've made, how has those mistakes affected you and the way you handle finances today?
So I'm definitely a lot more skeptical about things that seem too good to be true, because usually they are. So that's one thing with that. I'll don't know. One big thing for me has been for Christmas this year. My aunt got me a copy of the Total Money Makeover from Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, I
And
have that book too.
yeah, so that was even though I was well out of debt and all that, it was eye-opening for me, because it helped to lay out in very simple terms a way forward. And so even though myself personally not being super comfortable with the stock market, I am very much interested in, as if I can find some side gig money, I probably will start putting into TFSAs and building a separate nest egg away from my pension, just in case. But yeah, so really, yeah, just the mistakes I made before is like, yeah, don't borrow money as much as possible. If you need to get a mortgage for your home, do what you can to pay that off as quickly as possible. And that's why my goal is now is to save as much down payment money as I can, so that mortgage is as small as possible before I start.
That's smart. Very smart.
And just out of curiosity, with the Total Money Makeover, having read that, has it changed your approach to finances a lot? I know you spoke a little bit about that, to the effect that you're you're kind of I'm losing my wording here. But you spoke a little bit to that, but I was wondering if you could expand on that.
Yeah. So one of the things, that he makes very clear is, things about life insurance, and it's like, okay, this is how much life insurance you should get. So yeah, like that was one dumb thing, is I bought a whole life policy for a while. I was paying way too much money for this life insurance when, term life insurance works. Figuring out, okay, like you should be setting aside 15% of your income for retirement from the time you start working, because that's important, and let that grow as long as possible. So when I look at the math, my contributions to my military pension work out to about 12%. So I should try to find a little bit of money and start throwing that into a TFSA. But up until now, I've been putting that money into the farm, so I kind of still feel like I've been contributing 15% of my income in one way or another to my future. And then now, with the goal being try to be mortgage free as fast as possible. That's a big one. And then his idea after that is that his seventh step is figuring out, like, be generous, like figure out how to actually enjoy your money while also giving to other people, and continuing to save for your legacy, so that you can pass on something to your children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you talked about being generous there as being the seventh baby step
Yes.
in Dave Ramsey's program. Do you have any? Do you have anything that you're really passionate about in terms of how you can see yourself being generous down the road?
It's one thing that I've been thinking about a bit. Like, I do a little bit of donations to some charities that I feel are important, but I think something that I'd be very much more interested in is I like doing renovations on homes, and I know what it like having grown up poor. I think it'd be really rewarding at some point in time to be able to help provide housing for single moms and their kids, where they can be in a better neighborhood, and you can kind of help make it so that they can afford to live in a good area and not have that crushing burden of having to pay for everything. So that's an idea of something that I've kind of kicked around, where if I had more money than I knew what to do with, that might be a good way to spend some of it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I guess if we look at where you grew up, you said not growing up with a lot of money in your family to now, like, do you ever think that, you hit $100,000 at an early age, and now 30 years old, you're now a millionaire, or you have over $1 million net worth? Do you ever think about that, or that it's, like, you let other people out there might not think it's possible, but you are an example that you made dumb decisions, like took out $20,000 alone, but now years later, you've worked hard, you saved hard, and now you're a millionaire. So what would you say to those people that say it can't be done?
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I think anything that you want to do, you can do, but you have to be willing to work. Nothing worth doing comes easy, and you're gonna have to make sacrifices. Obviously, joining the military and going to a war zone is a big sacrifice, and not something that everyone can do or should be expected to do.
No.
But people can make choices like you can go to university or college in your hometown so that you can live with your parents and not rack up an extra $5,000 or $10,000 a year in student loans because of, I wanted to live in some other city and be away from home and have to pay for room and board kind of thing, right? That's a sacrifice. Working the extra jobs so that you're not getting into debt. If you do make a mistake, you need to own that mistake and figure out how to rectify it as soon as possible. Because if you have credit cards and you're paying 20% on a $10,000 bill, that's it's pretty hard to get ahead with things.
Exactly.
And so I think it's just a matter of everyone has their own skills and their own talents. So use what you have to make the extra money. But there's lots of ways to make money out there today.
And I guess I'm also wondering here, so was it just you that came up to this $1 million net worth, or do you have a wife or partner that has kind of contributed income along the way?
So other than the business deals that I've done with my siblings to help grow some of this through the rental house and the farm, no, I'm not currently married. Well, haven't been married, so no, I haven't. I guess divorces are pretty expensive, so I'm glad I've not lost half on that at any point in time here. So, but no, so far it's been predominantly me.
Wow.
So, but that is a good thing, is that if you do have a spouse, I definitely recommend you need to have the same financial goals so that you can work on them together, because the power of two that doubles your chances of being successful.
Right, definitely. Actually, on our last podcast, we were talking about that a little bit, and the person we were interviewing said that there's usually a spender in a relationship and a saver, so it's important to be on the same page.
It doesn't do you much good if you're pouring water into the bucket but there's a hole in the bottom of the bucket, because you're not going to get too far. So
So Nick, you mentioned earlier 25 years old, you hit 100K. How did you do that?
And it might be faulty math. So I think where I was getting at there was just with the current value of my pension, having paid into that pension for 5 years at that point already, that probably works out to about the right math. But I think the big one was probably, a big contributing factor was buying that rental property with my siblings, and not taking any money out of the house, just making sure that we paid down the mortgage as quickly as possible, and then that was all equity that we could tap into once we sold it.
Yeah, that's good. Do you do any farming, or is that just is there income coming from the farm that you make up?
Yeah, so there's different ways to do it. Like the easiest way to not be involved is, you can just rent out the land and farmers will pay a certain amount per acre to grow crops on it. I'm lucky where my stepfather, he farms as one of his side gigs. So he has some equipment and he'd go out there and plant the crops, and we it's called share cropping. So basically we would help pay for all the inputs, pay him for his time, and then we'd get an equal share of the crop once it's sold in the fall.
Okay.
So that farm on average probably brings somewhere between $8,000 to $10,000 a year in profit after it's all said and done. So it's not a huge return, but on $180,000 initial investment, that's not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you've also got that additional growth in the value of the property as well, which has been huge for you, like you were saying.
Absolutely, right. So, and that's an old farmer saying is that they're not making more land, so it's not a bad thing to in general keep going up in value.
Definitely.
That's awesome. So for younger listeners out there, listeners who are graduating high school, even university, or just getting into the workforce, Nick, what advice do you have for them financially or in general?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing would be live below your means. So, if you're working a part-time job and you're only making $100 a week, well, you need to spend 99 or less at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
But I think setting goals early for what it is that you hope to accomplish. So, a good first one is trying to graduate from university or college debt-free. So there's lots of different ways to do it. Some people can qualify for scholarships, whether it's saying, okay, yeah, I'll live at home so that it reduces my expenses, and try to, and work the part-time jobs. Anyone can go to school and work, 20 or 30 hours a week. That's not going to kill you. It'll keep you from doing dumb stuff with your money. I know even for a little bit, I worked as a bouncer just because I wanted to be
nice
at the bar with my friends, but at least I was getting paid instead of spending all my money. So that was, so that's one thing.
So millennials are out there saying that it's impossible, that they're drowning in debt, that it's impossible to reach even 100K. You would say?
I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I do understand some of the concerns, because, if you live in a city where real estate is extremely expensive, like, it's pretty hard to find a place where you can buy a rental property for $100,000 these days. But that being said, use your ingenuity. If you have 4 buddies that are all paying $1,000 a month in rent, if you combine your resources, you can probably find something that you could afford to live in together. And then now you're paying yourself versus paying a landlord. Yeah. So that's just one example of something that you can do. But, again, it's if you're not making enough money, and you're getting further and further behind, you need to make that decision. Either you need to figure out how to make more money in your current job, or maybe you need to work more jobs to get ahead, or find something else, right? So, and that's where education and job skills like that all comes into play. And you need to surround yourself too with, if you're looking for a new job, you can't just submit a resume because everyone else out there is doing the same thing. So you need to learn about the job and find people that work in that field that they can recommend you, because that'll give you a leg up.
Yeah, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, it's what you know as well, but I mean, who you know helps for sure.
Yeah, well, and the other ones, yeah, your network is your net worth kind of thing too, right? So
yeah,
it goes a long way.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you just freshly paid off the farm. Do you have any debt right now, or are you completely debt free?
Nope. Right now, everything's done. I also so I was supposed to get moved to Toronto this year with the military, but because of COVID, they canceled the posting, and I'm working from home online. So my girlfriend here, she owns a place, so I sold mine, and I moved in with her for this year. So yeah, so no mortgage, no anything, just stocking
Fully
my
debt
money
free.
and fully debt free, which is yeah, first time in a long time, which is
Yeah.
pretty nice.
So we got a 38-year-old who has zero debt and and over $1 million net worth. How does
Yeah,
that sound, Nick?
that's a pretty good summary. Yeah, sounds pretty good.
That is awesome,
Uh,
Nick. That is so wonderful.
Man, would you have even thought that you would be at 1 million net worth back when you were 18? Would you be like, yeah, I'm gonna be a millionaire by the time that I'm 38?
No, yeah, never crossed my mind. And and it's funny how it just kind of creeps up on you, like when you're, you know, I equate my pension to being similar to a TFSA or an RSP. So if you just start putting that money away and you don't think about it, it just comes out automatically.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you look in there 18 years later and, oh wow, there's 800K sitting around. So that's yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, Nick, but I also want to change your wording there. It's not just you doing nothing and it just creeps up on you. You've done the steps necessary to get to this point, right? You could have easily racked up credit card debt. You could have easily been driving a brand new vehicle every single year and trading it in and racking up vehicle, payments, and you could have easily went and bought a boat or accumulated so much debt over the past, 5, 10, 15 years that you're in the military. And then right now, maybe you're in the negative instead of being a millionaire, right? This is on you. Like it didn't just creep up your lifestyle and your saving mentality since you were 14 definitely went to this, it pushed you towards this trajectory, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess what I meant was just that, yeah, like that, if that money just goes into the account and you let it grow and you just leave it there,
Mm-hmm.
it's surprising how that compound
Oh
interest
yeah.
can grow it, right? Like
Yeah.
I certainly didn't put $800,000 into that account. That was so yeah. So in that way, but yeah, absolutely. Like cars are a tough one. Like everyone likes to have nice vehicles, but I didn't. I owned some pretty junky vehicles for a good chunk of time. The first new vehicle I bought was 5 years ago, just because pickup trucks, for whatever reason, a used one is $40,000 and a brand new one's 45. So I told myself I'd get the 45 one, but I didn't pay the extra for the leather interior and all the other stuff, because I was like, yeah, what, that extra $10,000 would be nice in the bank. So, things like that. But yeah, absolutely. Like, it's pretty easy, because the bank will say, oh yeah, you can have, on your salary and everything, you can have a $500,000 house. Well, it's like, no, I'm going to have a $250,000 house because that's what I feel comfortable with. The credit card companies are like, oh yeah, always, yeah, hey, we'll give you raise your credit limit, go buy this. We'll, no interest payments for 6 months or a year or whatever. And yeah, you just got to stay away from those traps, because that stuff will get you.
Yeah. So for viewers out there, who don't see, I'm kind of laughing to myself. Reason is because you're not the first six-figure millennial that we've talked to that said kind of like the same thing in terms of not buying a house that's too much, or even though if the bank approves you for a certain amount. And there's so many similar traits and characteristics of how we see people save up to 100K at an early age in life, and then up to the, hopefully with one day, the millionaire mark for the majority of them. And I think it is a common, mentality that people have, that not spending too much, living below your means, and even like you said, not buying a house, or your house poor that you can afford $500,000 instead you went and bought $250,000. And there's so many similar traits that people have, and I think it is, being rich down the road is totally a mentality, and I think people need to realize that the income does matter, but I feel like figuring out how you spend your money and how you invest your money ultimately decides how wealthy you will be 20, 30 years down the road.
Absolutely. I think it's, the one thing my dad says all the time too now is it's not how much you make, it's how much you can keep. Mm-hmm. And so, and a lot of people, they expand their lifestyle every time they get a pay raise. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you can get used to living on $50,000 a year, and then you get that pay bump to $60,000 or $70,000 a year, stay at the $50,000 mindset, because then you can really start growing your investments or paying down a mortgage or whatever else that you're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I love that saying that you just used. It's, yeah, and I just want to echo it. It's how much you can keep, right? It's not how much you make, it's how much you can keep. And I think
Yeah.
that's where a lot of people seem to get trapped, is that they think that, oh, you know, I'm just destined to be in debt for the rest of my life because I make, you know, $40,000 a year. That's not enough for bills. That's not enough to save. When really, you know, it's really just an expenses problem. They're, you know, paying those car payments. They're going out to eat 5 times a week, things like that. It's, I think there's a lot more, income is a lot more powerful
Yeah.
than a lot of people realize.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of having self-control and being able to restrain yourself on expenses.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have some fun along the way, but you have to. It has to be a line item in your budget. So
Yeah.
you know, on that $40,000, you know, if you take your 15% aside for saving and everything else is paid for, and it's like, okay, maybe there's 5 or 6% left, or that you can say, okay, you know what, I'm going to save this up because I want to go on that vacation somewhere every couple years, as opposed to, oh, I'll go on vacation every year, which I can't really afford, and just put it on the credit card, and now I'm making payments and everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but yeah, going. I find that things like, you know, buying your morning coffee or going out to dinners, those are the things that sneak up on you, and they just kill the budget big time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and you mentioned earlier, you know, if you make $100, at the very least you should be spending 99 or less. And I think that's just, you know, wisdom to live by, especially for high schoolers, college students, where it's just easy to fall into that trap of, oh, I have all this disposable income. And, you know, for myself, I mean, I had student loans, and I was just like, I'll worry about those later. I'll just, you know, make sure that my bank account holds me till the end of the semester.
Yeah, it's a future Tim problem at that point, right? So,
Yeah, exactly.
um,
It's
yeah, so
it's
and I guess maybe like the only thing, like talking about students there too, is like, you know, for those that are fortunate enough where your parents have saved up, and you know, university or college are covered, um, still sock away money, because there's going to be all kinds of stuff that you're going to want to buy once you graduate. So, you know, think
yeah.
about, you know, okay, what's the car that you might want to buy as a graduation present, or the down payment for your first house, or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
figure out what that goal is, and keep trying to sock away money while you can.
Exactly. So Nick, last closing question here. What are your long-term goals? 10-year, 20-year, 25, 30-year goals? What is your long-term goal?
Yeah, so
Financially and life.
okay, yeah, so yeah, the first thing is, I've got 7 years left until I can retire with the 25-year pension from the military.
Not bad.
I'm still loving the work, so I don't necessarily, by no means am I sure that I'm going to leave the military at that point, but at
Mhm.
least I know I want to get to that point. So that's what the next 7 years are. So it's just kind of a matter of learning as much as I can, getting as much experience, and now, though, I am starting to think a little bit more about what I actually want to do when I grow up. Now that you know, it's not just you know, the army will be behind me at some point. So where are my interests, and what do I want to do? Because you know, retiring and sitting at home at age 45 is a pretty good path to an early grave, I think. So
Yeah.
need to figure out something else to do. So yeah, I've been having some good discussions with some of my military friends, and you know, some of them are starting up side businesses and figuring that out. So I think that's going to be the next goal for me, is that. I'm also at the point now where, yeah, getting pretty close to 40, which is scary. So if a wife and kids is going to happen, probably need to start putting some effort that way. So I'd love to have a couple kids, and then yeah, and then the big thing would be, you know, the nice thing about having a pension that early is that it kind of frees me up where I can maybe take some risk with starting a business or whatever, or it gives me the freedom to be home with my kids a little bit more, where maybe only have to work 6 months of the year to still kind of maintain the lifestyle that I'm used to now. So, different ways to skin the cat, but yeah, definitely like to be a family man, and then pass on what I've learned, and hopefully my kids can make way better decisions than I did way earlier, and keep growing this legacy.
And hopefully work just as hard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's not too many lazy people in my family. So yeah, so hopefully we can keep that going.
I'm sure you'll be working hard still, judging by everything that you've told us up to this point.
I'm sure I'll find something to do to keep me busy. So
yeah, that's good. Cool. Well, Nick, on behalf of the Financial Classroom, Tim and I, we want to thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure talking to you and hearing from you. And for those of you out there who are young, or those of you who are millennials, or heck, even older, who listen to this and who think that, there's no way to get ahead, just remember that Nick got out and he worked hard. He came from nothing, but he became a millionaire now by 38 years old. And it is possible. Work hard and live below your means. And yeah, Nick, you got any closing remarks?
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for having me today. It was a pleasure meeting you as well. And, I guess the only last plug I'll throw out there is the military is a great career. It's a great option, especially for young people that aren't really sure what they want to do with their life. So starting out, you can get a lot of skills. Most jobs are not out warfighting stuff. It's being a mechanic or a nurse or, any of the jobs that you see as a civilian, just putting on a uniform. So it's a good way to get some training and some experience, and it can set you up for a good life, either as a civilian, or you can end up like me and making a career out of it. So.
And free degree.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, there's free degrees, free college diplomas, all kinds of stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. If you like to hear more Six Figure Millennial, check out the Financial Classroom podcast on Facebook, or at Financial Classroom on Instagram. And we're on most podcast platforms: Apple Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. So thanks again. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment or send us an email at thefinancialclassroom@gmail.com.
Just financialclassroom@gmail.com.
Financialclassroom@gmail.com. There you go, guys. All right. Thanks again, Nick. And we'll talk to you guys another time. Later.